and go with it.
I'm a personal trainer. My name is Scott Murphy, and I have a great admiration for engineers. A few of my clients have been engineers. The device I want to entice you guys to take on is called the ForceDeck. And forgive me, let me use my laser pointer. I bought one specifically for this occasion. As you can see here, it's comprised of a deck or a portable platform, a feedback display, and pay no attention to these dumbbells. They're meant to be cable handles. It's a picture flow. Some resistance sources, and that's pretty much it. Some things I want to cover that inspired the device. String training, contrary to what a lot of people think, it's not done as efficiently as it can be. As engineers, a lot of you guys understand that in order to make a design as streamlined as possible, the instructions got to be as specific as possible. And with strength training, the instructions are the repetitions you do. And strength is force, and force is mass times acceleration, as all of you I'm sure know. Problem is, when we lift weights, we have no idea to what degree we're accelerating the load we're lifting. So therefore, one rep could communicate the need to make adaptations to increase peak force, the next one may not. Realizing this, I started to time my clients to get an idea as to how much force they could produce. And resultantly, results went through the roof, and the amount of work that they had to do drastically decreased because the signal was very specific. People made rapid results. Believe it or not, I'm 60 years old, and I've used my training to stay looking this young. But nonetheless, it amplifies strength to a great degree. And so I went to grad school to research it. So over the course of my studies, all the research confirmed it. Particularly, it's not common in health club settings to see this type of training because it's mainly done with elite athletes, but it works well for the general public. So I contemplated a device, and a lot of you are probably thinking, pressure mapping, accelerometers, and the like, and that's great, but I also train a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, and I bring the ideas up to them. And problem with exercise devices is you have to educate the public as to why they're important, first and foremost. And then two, you can only sell one unit at a time. However, I work at a club, and I know as far as in the club setting, equipment classes or group equipment classes like spin and things like that, you don't have to educate the public on anything, and clubs buy them in droves. So I imagined a device that could be used that could sneak force center training into a class setting, and it turns out to be an awesome idea. People tolerate just pedaling in a spin class, and they love it. They had a device that would allow them a multitude of movements in a class setting that would work well also. Now, so it takes care of the education and being able to sell multiple units at a time. But there are some issues. Among them are safety. The nervous system, regardless of the joint's ability to tolerate force, you're going to get a vast spectrum of form among people. So if someone's assuming vulnerable biomechanics and they're under a crushing load, the nervous system does not care if the joint cannot tolerate the muscular force. So it's going to recruit anyway, and joint damage risk is increased. So that has to be addressed in a class setting because you can't have one instructor for every person. That's just personal training. And two, you have to keep people engaged. In order to produce maximal force, you have to be sufficiently rested. So in a class setting, you cannot tell these people to rest 2 minutes between sets. They're incredibly impatient people. So you have to figure out a way in which to keep them engaged, but at the same time, allow them to produce peak force. So that's why I came up with the ForceDeck. And as I'll go back to the previous slide, the ForceDeck, first and foremost, has the feedback, because the feedback's critical. People have to know that each repetition is giving an unadulterated communication to the body to get stronger. Not prolonged work, not extend work, but to actually produce as much force as possible. And that tends to yield the most functional and cosmetic results for people. So the feedback on every repetition, and actually, if I may, I'm going to go to the proposed feedback display. So again, this doesn't. You guys have liberty to come up with your own solutions. However, you know, an easy tension level. It doesn't have to necessarily be in the form of newtons or pounds or anything like that, but just like an exercise bike, and then you have repetitions and the associated force with those repetitions. And again, it could be a force correlate. It doesn't necessarily have to be in newtons. Calories per hour actually on a row machine seems to correlate directly with the amount of force someone produces against it. And furthermore, it gives very, very adaptable units. So even the most mild increment in force will be perceived and recorded. So for in this example, the peak was 321, and they started to decline or stagnate, so they stopped. But again, the feedback display is critical to ensuring that force output is upheld. Now, in terms of the safety, it would be great if the resistance allowed for peak force or allowed for sufficient resistance to the user in the intended direction. However, have the option of not forcefully redirecting the person. So similar to that of an exercise bike or row machine, you can exert quite a bit of force against it. However, if at any point you're uncomfortable, you can stop without the threat of being forcefully redirected. As I mentioned before, that will disincline the nervous system from reflexively recruiting muscles to a degree that can exert damage on the joints. So that would be, and that should create a situation in which people are no more risky using the force deck than they would be tying their shoes or anything like that. As far as engagement is concerned, as I mentioned, it's a cable unit. Cable units allow for immediate transition for movement. So as I mentioned, you need to rest sufficiently, or at least the muscle group needs to rest sufficiently in order to resume peak force when it resumes a movement. So for example, someone could be doing a one-arm shoulder press, and when their force starts to stagnate, they can easily switch sides. Immediately go to a leg movement, a hip stabilizing movement, a single joint pull movement, which is not pressed. And if by the time they resume their previous movement, they will have been sufficiently rested in order to resume peak force and therefore not dilute the communication to their body to get stronger. So the force deck is that compromise. It's bringing force to the bringing force center training to the market, but in a way that can be marketable, feasible, and safe. There are simpler solutions to measure force, obviously. However, manufacturers don't manufacture things just because they're cool. You know, there has to be they have to figure out a way in which to make it monetizable. So the force deck is my compromise or my solution to that problem. So, and I will extend a little bit further. And this is basically that feedback display is meant to be flexible so people can use it for a multitude of positions. So people can lay down, and then this is an improvised picture of it being, there we go. In a class setting, again, these are improvised pictures, but so in terms of the profitability, I work at a club and I know that anything that can keep members engaged, they're willing to buy, irrespective of its benefits. So it takes care of the profitability and education aspect of it, and allows me to contribute my gift of force to the world. So thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. Luckily, I didn't have to use the tubes.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yes.
Approximately how many different types of exercise are you envisioning doing this? Like how many different types of movement in one class would you be using it?
Well, it would be I do circuits with my clients because I train people this way and I time them. Obviously, people are not going to time themselves, so I'll time how quickly someone does something. And we won't resume a movement if we're going to do a complete circuit, maybe as many as 6 exercises, unrelated movements, and then return to it. And that would be planned by an instructor. It's meant to be led by an instructor. So.
And is this only meant for like arm exercises, or is there going to be like a leg strap?
Oh yeah, exactly. And actually, good question. In terms of the handles preferably should be easily fastened. So if I may show you guys, these handles aren't sufficient, but having a big enough space in which they can be placed over the foot gracefully, not with the difficulty I just displayed, but you could do things such as that. You could lay on your back, do Pilates type exercises. And as I was mentioning, in terms of leg motions, when you're doing there goes the laser pointer. And then, so doing leg exercises, again, I don't have a force deck here. However, this is a split squat is a phenomenal leg exercise, and doing a split stance movement, the amount of force you could exert upward, again, without being opposed, it will hammer the glutes, thighs, and the muscle groups of the hips. So, and there's obviously Mr. Spanko obviously looks like you work out, and many of you look like you work out, and you probably attain a great deal of success doing what you do. However, there is a market out there, including myself. I hate exercising. I don't like doing it, so I like to try to. I rarely do more than one repetition of anything, and I just focus on being more forceful, and it allows me to be done. Literally in like a couple minutes. And there is a market for it with a lot of people I train who are quite busy. So.
Great. If you have any more questions, you can talk to me, and if I'll put Scott's email up, and you can email him directly. Again, this is an option for you.